What's going on, everyone? This is Devin here. This is just a very impromptu honing video. Nothing really at stake here. I've over the weekend I had continued to sort of experiment around with the King stones. I looked at my King 6K a bit more carefully, and man, it really just seems to do a number on the edge. If you follow like a bevel setter and jump straight to it, as soon as you kind of get past the bevel setting scratch pattern, like as soon as you can get off the 6K, like the better. There seems to be something about staying on that stone past the minimum requisite of what that stone's going to do, that I consistently see some issues with the edge. Someone had commented in the most recent honing video something quite similar, that he was experiencing the same thing, and it was unique to the 6K for whatever reason. So I'll just kind of leave that at that. But so I'm kind of honing out a little bit of damage here with a 2000 grit Shapton Kuramaku. I could have used the Shapton Glassstone 2000 grit. I really could have even used my King 1200. I would really like to have the King 2000 grit soaker. Now the 2000 grit King Hyper is like a blonde colored stone, but it is also water absorbent, and I believe it is also a soaking stone. But most of, well, you can't really see it here, but like this is a King stone here off to the side. Like your 3K, 4K, 8K Kings, those are not soaking stones. I know people will soak them and will continue to soak them despite what I'm saying here, but strictly speaking, those are technically splash and go stones. So could you get away with a 2-3 minute soak with them? Maybe, I don't know, but all I can really do is just reiterate what the manufacturer states, and that those are splash and goes. So now what I have out here, I have two full-size King stones out on standby, on the ready. One of them is known to me. It's because I purchased it new, and it's the 3000 grit stone. And the other stone, I'm not sure what the grit rating is. I was lucky enough to have been gifted this stone over the weekend. And I'll show it to you here in a minute. I can't tell if it's the King 4000 or the King 8000. He doesn't remember. He got it years ago, probably in 2010, 2011, at the Atlanta Blade Show, and he doesn't really remember the vendor, or he doesn't have the original box or anything like that. Had a little bit of oxidation, but it lapped out easy enough. I kind of think it's the 4000 grit stone because the scratch pattern is awfully similar to the 3K. It's just slightly more refined. The edge condition is, in fact, a little bit better than the 3K, but the polish does not really scream 8K. Unfortunately, the 6K, to me, leaves a much more coarse scratch pattern than whatever this mystery King is. And you might think, well, that means that must be the 8K your friend gave you. Well, I'm not really sure, because to me, the King 6K, at least everyone that I've had, they leave a scratch pattern and a rougher edge condition than even the 3000 grit stone. So I really don't know what's going on with that King 6K. The binder is not the same. And we'll take a look at what I'm talking about right now, in fact. So we're going to have a look at the 3K. I just need to rinse this real quick. So there's the 3K. And then here's the the Mystery K. It's got this like patterning in it. You really can't make it out. You might still be able to see a little bit of that speckling in there. So it's got some of that going on. It's a little darker in tone. Here's the 3K, and it's got some of that speckling in it as well. They look almost identical under the microscope, but even the 6K under the microscope looks super close to these two, but the binder is wildly, wildly different. Both of these stones feel like super slick, super fast under the blade. Doesn't feel rough, coarse, or anything like that. And it never really sticks on either stone. So until I get the G1 8000 grit stone, or someone watching this channel has one and they know it's the full size G1 8K and they want to lend it out to me for the sake of a video, just for some comparison, just to help me maybe figure out what stone this is, that would be greatly appreciated. I don't know that I would want to own the 8000 grit King per se, but I would love to get to the bottom of what stone that is, because there's no ink left on that stone. It was lapped off a long, long time ago, and there's just no way for me to really know what it is. My best guess is that it is probably a 4K, but I just can't be sure. So I'm coming in here with some pressure on this 3000 grit stone. Just a fantastic blade, feel under the blade. So now I'm backing off a little bit, or actually quite a bit. So now this is like not weight of the blade, but pretty darn close to weight of the blade. Again, please don't use my thoughts on pressure as like an absolute model. You can lean into a razor enough so that you wind up kind of cutting behind the cutting edge and not so much the cutting edge itself. And when you back off the pressure, you can look at the blade, and actually it will actually look like you've been using tape. You'll wind up with a double bevel, or like a compound bevel. If you're getting a compound bevel, and you know that you're not using tape, that means somewhere along the way you're almost for sure using enough pressure to flex the blade. So take that for whatever it's worth. So as you can see, the 3K, there's definitely a loading issue with it. We'll just put the whatever K in position here. I want to take a quick look at this. Probably not with the Carson microbright, but just under the loop real quick, the loop, and see what's going on here. Still pretty rough out at the outer edge. I don't really think I'm ready for this stone yet. Actually, I cheated. I did use the microbright. Still pretty rough at the outer edge. I can tell that the 2000 grit work was not honed out that well, or well enough. But, I had mentioned the loading. So both of these stones load a fair amount, and they load quite fast. And they load kind of almost like in the same time frame. Part of me wondered if both of these are 3000 grit stones, but if he bought that stone at the Blade Show 15 years ago, the King 3K would have been it would have been a really implausible grit to have been circulating at a Blade Show. I think 4K, 8K would have been more plausible as something that a vendor might have had at the Atlanta Blade Show, Georgia Blade Show, whatever you want to call it. So I'm still leaning towards the 4K. it's heavier than the 6K and the 3K. So this stone's, it's got a little weight to it, but this other stone here is heavier. It's like it's more dense for whatever reason, which I think is interesting. So I don't really have any absolute point that I'm trying to make with this video. This is just a watch while I'm honing kind of thing, trying to get to the bottom of what this other stone probably is. But I'm trying to do a little bit more cleanup here on the 3K, so I'm not coming in sort of behind the 8-ball on the other stone and getting sort of a skewed idea of what it is, you know. As far as 2000 grit stones, you know, the Shapton Kuramaku 2K, definitely a bit more coarse than the 2000 grit glass stone, and it's almost certainly going to be a bit more coarse than the 2000 grit Rockstar. So not the finest 2K out there. It's probably in the same zip code as the 2000 grit Chaucera, 90 with Chaucera. I can't be sure though. I would love to own the 2K Chaucera or even the Errata. I know some people don't like the Erratas. I think for the difference in cost, I think I would learn to live with the Errata series, the Galkin Errata series stones, no problem. All right, so now we're in a little better shape there. Yeah, not a bad look. I mean, it's a king stone. I mean, you know, it's these stones. So this is sort of the liability of making videos here. So one thing I should have made very clear is I really don't recommend king stones for straight razors as your first stone purchase. Please stick with Shapton, Naniwa. Some of the Suhiro stones could be plausible for razors. I'm not as familiar with the Suhiro line. But my point is, if you don't have any stones, I am not recommending king stones as your first set of stones. They're really not optimized for straight razors. They can be made to work, but I think they would be more useful in the hands of a more experienced honer that's just looking to have sort of a novel honing experience, you know. I'm not saying that beginners should leave these stones to the old dogs because we have some, you know, secret power, you know, some kind of secret honing power here. But you know, if you've been honing a little while, you probably know how to get some kind of a shaving edge with stones that are just not super optimal for razors, but yet, you know, you kind of know your workarounds. And sometimes there's not always going to be a workaround, even if, you know, regardless of your experience level. So if the sun, moon, and stars line up just right, and I can get off of a King 6K right in the nick of time and strop the living daylights out of it with Crocs, I can get a plausible shave, which we saw on video. That is not the experience that I'm recommending as a benchmark type of edge, right? So you can see here that this loads almost identically to the other stone. It feels a little more dense. The tap sound makes me think this is a little slightly harder than the 3K. I'm just really torn up because I just don't know what this stone is. I'm sure though it's something north of 3,000. Part of me wondered, you know, could this be an old iteration of a 6K that doesn't suck, you know? But I'm not sure that it is. I've seen I've seen older 6K stones and 8,000 grit stones in older videos on YouTube that are like 10 plus years old, and they could have this base without the center support, the darker base with no center support, or they could have the newer base that has the center support with a lighter tone. And so you really can't tell like by the base or anything like that, like what the stone is. It's just not like a good identifier. What I can say is that this is I'm real happy with the way this feels while I'm honing. The feel under the blade is really quite exceptional. So as far as just the fun factor and the novelty factor, both the 3K and whatever this stone is, they definitely satisfied those two criteria. And this stone was, again, it was a free stone. You know, he had barely used it. I do think he kept it in the garage for most of its life, but he had you know, he didn't leave the door open or anything like that. Newer house with, you know, good R value, so it's not like this thing was like frozen like a popsicle for 15 winters or something like that. You know, I did have to lap out some oxidation and some sticker residue, but the stone doesn't feel like it was ruined by storage or anything like that. So my vote is that this is a 4K. I think that, again, having a 4K out at the blade show would have been sort of an odd stone choice as well. I just think it's more plausible than the 3K. We'll take a last look here with the last few strokes on this stone and kind of wrap up the video. So, Mystery King sure feels great to hone on. And the scratch pattern is definitely an improvement from the 3K. Edge condition is straighter, scratch pattern a little tighter, a little closer together, a little more shallow. If anyone wants to take pity on me and loan me just for video purposes, I'm not asking someone to donate an 8K to me permanently, but if someone has the G1 8K and is willing to help me figure out what stone I have, that would be great. So I'm looking at this with the microbright here, just having one last look. So the scratch pattern is quite similar to the 3K, but it's definitely an improvement. It's just like a subtle little improvement. It's like a little bump up from the 3K. I believe this to be a 4,000 grit stone, but I could be wrong. I do not think it's the 6K by any stretch of the imagination. I know the 6K binder has went under some changes, and even between the KD65 1.6 combo and the what is the other one? There's another 1K 6K combo, the KDS. I believe it's the KDS, and that one is a slightly different binder than the KD65. One is a little harder than the other. So my point is the 6K is known to have had some changes in the binders, and that is even including some of the current production 6,000 grit stones. So like the, I believe the 6K is like a F series. So like there's a F3 that's a smaller stone than the F1. And the smaller stone has a more resin type of binder. No, I'm sorry. So the 6,000 grit stones are an S as in Sierra. So I have the S3 and the S1. The S1 is the larger stone that has like a softer clay type binder. And the S3 is a smaller stone with a slightly harder resiny kind of binder. And they both are pretty rough on the edge. They feel different under the blade, but they're both sort of do their own little, they both leave sort of the same ugliness on the bevel. This stone does not do that. And yes, I'm calling this a 4K for the time being. So that's a wrap on the video. I always appreciate it whenever you guys stop by, and we'll see you on the next one.